So, you want to learn Zyn? You want to learn the basics of synthesis? Then this video is for you. To begin with, start up by opening Zyn. As you'll notice, when you start it up, it might look like this. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. But if it does, you don't want it to be like this. This is garbage. So, you go to the Mix tab here, and you click Switch User Interface Mode. Say yes, and this will be what we'll be using. Now this might look a little bit daunting at first, but don't worry, I'll be going through everything as we go. For now, just click on the VK button right here. This will open up the keyboard. Now the reason we want to use this is that it lets us have all of the windows of Zyn open at once without having to go back to the DAW, which means it's always in front and it's easier to work with. As a side note, you will want to have your velocity sensing here to be turned all the way up. This will make it easier to play with your sound without having it be different depending on velocity, which could get in the way of you getting the sound you want in the end. So just turn it up for now, don't worry about it, we can turn it back down later if you want to use velocity. From there, you'll want to click on Edit Instrument, so that we can go and edit the instrument, right? Self-explanatory. So this here is the main instrument window. This is where you'll be selecting your instrument. As you can see, there are 3 of them. We'll be starting with the first one, which is Adsynth. If you want to use multiple at a time, you just click on Enabled or Disabled here. Don't worry about this for now, we'll get to this later. Now click on the Edit button right here, and what you'll see is that it'll open up a window for you for the Adsynth Global Parameters window. This window here controls everything to do with Adsynth. Now, I know it looks really daunting, but don't worry about it too much. I'll explain how everything works. So, to start with, the way that Zyn sort of organizes things is through these squares here, like this, right? So, if you look at the top here, it says amplitude. So, everything in here has to do with amplitude. Here it would be for filters, and here it would be for frequency. Now, the blue rectangles inside are for different groups of things that go together. For example, an amplitude envelope, as well as an amplitude LFO. Now, what an envelope will do for your sound is that it'll permit it to go up and down over time based on the parameters you set. So, here for example, you've got attack, decay, sustain, release. Now, what attack will do is it'll make the sound ramp up over time. So, for example, if I go ahead and bring it up like this, you will hear this. You can change how long or how short it takes to actually ramp up. Now you can do the same with decay. Now with the way it's set up right now, with the sustain fully on, it will never decay because, well, there's sustain, right? So let's just turn that off and turn on the decay. And now you'll see when I play the note decays over time. Nice. Now, let's say you wanted it to release and decay after you let go of the key. This would be this knob right here. So you just bring this up and then... Beautiful. And that's basically how an envelope would work in terms of amplitude, right? Now, here, the LFO, what it'll do is go up and down rhythmically over time. So, if you use the amplitude envelope, then it'll go up and down in volume over time. So, bring up the depth here, and what you'll see is it just goes up and down in volume. You can change the frequency. You can change the depth. You can change where it starts, as well as give it a delay before it actually starts doing its thing. Which can be useful, let's say, if you're doing a chore and the chore needs to have vibrato, but only after a while, right? So, basically all of these envelopes and LFOs you see here, they work the same, except they work for the filter and frequency respectively. Small note on filters in Adsynth. By default, they will show up like this, which is to say you have a low-pass filter with the cutoff over here and a resonance like this. Ideally, you do not want to mess with filters until you're ready to mess with them. So having a filter here by default means that your sound is already modified in a way that's not necessarily optimal. So just go like this and like that, and you should be good to go for the filters. Now with just this, of course, you won't really have enough to really do anything with Adsynth, right? So if you want to be able to modify the waveform or do anything of the sort, what you'll need to do is to go to Show Voice Parameters right here, and this will open up this window here. This is the Adsynth Voice Parameters window. It looks a little bit daunting, but just to show you here, this entire thing here is replicated right here. So amplitude, filter, frequency, all of this is the same, except it only affects the voice that you're on as opposed to everything that's under Adsynth. Now the differences come here with the modulator section, which is what we're going to use if we want to do AM, FM, or PM. Here we've got the waveform section, which will control everything to do with a waveform. You've got unison as well, which can be useful if you're trying to do, let's say, a supersaw, which I'll show you later. As you can see, now it sounds a little bit more special than if it was just this. Now, if you want to actually change the waveform, you will have to click on the little change button right here. This will bring up this menu. Now, of course, this also looks a little bit complicated, but it is not that bad. So, to begin with, this is your basic function, which is to say the waveform without any of the modifications. Here, the drop-down lets you change which type of waveform you have. So let's say you wanted a saw, as we were talking about earlier. Then you would click Power, and here you have a saw. You can use the parameter knob right here to change how the saw behaves. And then you can use BF-mod right here to do a whole bunch of things to it, and just mess around, right? So, for now we'll just go back to a sine wave, because I want to show you here that this right there is for the harmonics of the sound. So here you have the first, second, third, fourth harmonics, etc. So you can bring up the harmonics like this to basically shape your waveform as you wish. You can do this with any basic waveform, so you can take the power, and here you have how this would modify it. To top that off, the bottom sliders here control the phase. You won't be using that a whole lot, but as you can see here, it changes the harmonics of the sound, which is what you're seeing on top here. These settings here can actually be very useful when you're actually trying to change your waveform. So let's say, for example, you went here, then you have a bunch of ways of actually making the waveform change, like here for quantization, which is just going to essentially turn it into little squares. This is not really noticeable like this, but if we go like that, then you can see this is what it's doing to the waveform. Here you've got filters, if you want to just, mess with the harmonics up here so that they're closer like that. You can do a low pass, a high pass for similar results. And the mod section here works exactly like the BF mod section here. And SP adjustment here lets you do stuff like this, which lets you just bring up all of the sounds to be mostly equal, which is similar to OTT if you think about it. Now I'll be returning to a sine wave just to essentially show you how to use modulation in just a moment. So to be able to clear this back to a basic sine wave, what you do is you click Sine here, and this basically takes what you have here and makes it out of sine waves, which is your basic waveform now. You can click Clear here just to have the single fundamental harmonic back like this. Now, to actually do any form of modulation, you will need to select them from the drop down here. So for instance, if you wanted to do FM, FM essentially is frequency modulation, which is to say this shape right here will define the up and down motion in pitch of your sound. Now at this rate, it is going so fast that it'll introduce new harmonics. So if I just go ahead here and have the amplitude like this and just play like so, I'll try to lower the volume so I don't hurt your ears, but I can't guarantee anything. Now if you remove the amplitude like this, you'll see this is just your regular sine wave. So the amplitude defines how high up and down in pitch the frequency modulation will actually go. And now if you use the amplitude envelope, you can tell it to go up in amplitude over time. Nice. You can also tell it to go back down. So it can be very useful just like this, but you can also change the frequency at which your oscillator goes, just to show you here that it is indeed going up and down in frequency. So this is how you would set up for FM, right? But you can also use different waveforms in the FM parameters here by clicking the change button. So let's say you wanted to do, I don't know, let's say this, a square wave. Nice. Now, depending on what you actually want to do, you might actually find that it's more useful for you to use, let's say, PM. Because what PM will let you do is something very similar to frequency modulation, but it'll be more melodical. It'll be less likely to turn into white noise, for instance. Let me just turn that off. And here what PM is doing is phase modulation, which, you know, is different from frequency modulation. Now, I believe ring modulation is quite similar to a form of amplitude modulation, which would mean the signal would go up and down in volume, you know, like an amplitude LFO, but just so fast that new frequencies are showing up. Now, another thing you can do in Adsynth is to actually tell it to use as its modulator one of your previous oscillators. So let's say we go and we open up another oscillator right here, and we give this one a volume of 0, because the mod amplitude will control it anyways, and we don't want this to play at the same time. So you could if you want to. Once we go here, and we go to, let's say, FM, then we can tell it to use EXTM1, which is the shape of the modulator right here. You can also tell it instead to use the external modulator here, which is our first voice right here. So you'll see if I change this to, let's say, something stupid like this. Let's just go like that. Wowee. And then we go back here. Then our EXT mod 1 would actually be this waveform right here. It actually gets even better than this, because then what you can do is to take this oscillator here and even modulate it, right? So you can modulate this oscillator, you can give it an amplitude LFO, maybe an envelope, I don't care. You can give it a filter, and then tell it, okay, your filter will change over time like this, and then suddenly you get this. So as you can see, modulation like this is pretty powerful, and you have a lot to work with here. Now that's basically the gist of Adsynth. I forgot to mention this earlier, but there are a few settings here in the Adsynth oscillator editor that might be interesting for you guys to be, you know, privy to. The first being this here, the HRND setting. This will allow you to randomize the harmonics on every note played. And this one here, adaptive harmonics, what it'll do is change how the harmonics behave depending on how high or low your note is. Now then, once we open Subsynth, you will probably notice that it's a little bit different to Adsynth. But that's not anything to worry about. Your amplitude and frequency are still here, as well as your filter. Those are the same as in Adsynth. The big differences here are these sliders here and this overtones section here. Now, for these sliders, what they are exactly like in the waveform window. It's each of the harmonics of the sound. So, first harmonic, fourth, let's say, third. And so same thing as an Adsynth, right? So with this in mind, what this is a subtractive synthesizer. The way it works is that it plays noise, right? Just completely random noise, and then filters everything of the noise except for the sliders here that are brought up. And what this bandwidth setting here will say is, for this harmonic here, I want the noise to be around it by this much, or by that much, right? So if I have this bandwidth here like so, it sounds like this. But if I bring it up, it sounds like this. Now I changed the volume as well previously, so just letting you know. Now what this changes is the scale of the noise, so how big the noise is, essentially. If we go here, for instance, like so, the other way, clean. So you can change the bandwidth like this. You can change it with the envelope to say, I want it to start less noisy, and then get increasingly noisy as it releases. So nice. Note that the sliders on the bottom here are to control the bandwidth of each of the harmonics separately. So you could say, oh, I want the 6th harmonic here to be as clean as possible, and I want the 4th harmonic here to be really noisy. This would let you do that, and this would control it globally. Now, one thing you'll notice about Subsynth is that it does not have any LFOs anywhere. I can't really give you a good reason for this. It was probably due to the space the synth already takes up. If you ask me, that's a little bit ridiculous because there's no way it couldn't work. So, what you do to be able to do an LFO is a little bit more complex. You will have to go in, and let's say you wanted an LFO for the frequency. Then you would click Enabled right here, and then here you have the E button. What this will let you do is to open up the envelope like so, and then you can go in free mode. Once in free mode, here you can add points, and then you can move those points. So you can essentially create your own vibrato this way. So if we listen, so this is how you would do an LFO if you were in Subsynth. Now that you understand where everything goes in terms of all of the different instruments in ZynAddSubFX, I can go ahead and show you the effects section here, which is similar to the one that's over here. Except this one applies only to this instrument. Those three. This lets you add a bunch of effects on top of your existing instruments. So let's say you wanted to have, I don't know, a chorus. Then you can add one right here. If you want a distortion, you can have it right there. So, before, after. So as you can imagine, this opens up a lot of opportunities to make more complex sounds than you could with just the three synths together. Let's say you wanted to do a comb filter. Then what you would do is you would get an echo right here, which is just a delay, and you would tell it to have a really short delay. Now, what it usually sounds like is this. But what we want is for that metallic sound to come in, right? So, just make it really low like this, bring up the feedback. And then you could have distortion right on top like this. You could say have the noise come in like so. fairly self-explanatory, right? So now that you guys understand most of the basics when it comes to Zyn, we can go ahead and make different types of things, right? So let's just go ahead and start with a kick. To begin with, we'll just want to open Adsynth right here, or any synth really. I'm just going to do it in Adsynth for now. And the basics of a kick is just that you have a sound that comes up in pitch and then straight down really quickly to a sub-frequency. So we'll start with this. And then we have a frequency envelope right here. So we can say your starting value is way up here. And then this will change how long it takes to go back down to the value that's here. So now we have sort of a tom, right? Here, what we can tell it is to have decay and some release, maybe. Now this is a little bit too much, so let's just lower that like that. And now we can say smaller attack time. And here, these settings are really nice because they let you change the beginning transient. And here, what we can do is just go in effects right there. Add some distortion, maybe as the last one in case we want to do more before the distortion. And here, let's change this like that. And there you go, that's a kick. Now let's make a choir, why not? We'll start up in Padsynth here. And we'll just go ahead and change the waveform real quick. So let's see here, what are we going to do? We'll just have this here, like so. Sort of a soft square wave. Then we can go here with rev, just go like that. Maybe soften it up. Can bring it up with power a little bit. And we can go here, change the bandwidth. Change the attack of the amplitude a little bit. Change the release. Then maybe do some effects just for fun. Oh, we already did distortion, my bad. Without distortion, it sounds like this. Which is honestly way better. Go ahead here. Maybe a dynamic filter. Nah, it's honestly better just like this. We could do a sweep with the filter here. So let's see. Like so. Now what you'll notice here is that with the filter envelope, every time you're messing with release here, it kind of sounds weird. So if you just open it up, this is what it's doing right now. It's ramping up, it's holding, and then this here is the release. The release is bringing it up like this. This is not what we want, so we'll just go ahead here and go like that. And like so. Maybe like this. And there we go, you basically have a choir. Let's have a go at making a Brostep sweeper growl or something similar. I'll start up in Adsynth. I'm thinking of doing some frequency modulation for it. Start with this. Then we can go here. Can change the waveform. No. Now we can do some unison right on top of it. Maybe lower this a bit. Could also use this. So now we have a nice starting sound here. We'll get a second oscillator and make it really low. And what we'll do is just take this LFO right here, and we'll copy it to the amplitude LFO right here. So now, this sub-frequency is going up and down with the waving motion of this one. Now this isn't really loud and like obnoxious as it should be, so let's just go here, and the first thing we'll do is just get a comb filter going. So let's just lower this like so, high feedback, like this, too much. Maybe like this. And then we can go to distortion right here. Okay, that's too much of this. Now what we could do as well is just go crazy, you know? So let's just take this, lower the volume, and then use it as the modulator for this. do actually is just take this nice little waveform here and make it part of another part of the instrument. So what we'll do is go to the panel window right here, and then this lets you make multiple instances of Zyn within itself. So we're making this, and the channel here is the MIDI channel. We want them both to be on the same channel. So now after clicking edit, we go in here, and the other one is not making any noise, so let's just go back here and see what's going on. So this is on, and this is on. Oh, my bad, that's the wrong modulator, okay. So now we can just shut this one down. Alright. Now we'll just go ahead here, back to this guy. Make this one lower. Close enough, right? Now then, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Have a good one. Please subscribe, like the video, comment, share, etc. Here's the scripts that I used.
Want to learn Zyn? Want to learn synth basics? Video for you. Open Zyn, Challenge Advanced. Basic useless, click virtual keyboard. Very useful when no MIDI keyboard for microtonal click skills. Not worry. Panel window open multiple instrument in one. Not worry. Vel, Sense, Max. Make easier. Edit instrument, 3 choice. 3 parts. Adsynth part. Look, square's square name. Square as blue. Blue has name within square. Envelope is this. LFO is that. Can use LFO to randomize on note play. Each section has envelope LFO. Adsynth Global controls all voice. Show voice param. Notice same box is global, but now waveform and modulator. Same thing. Edit waveform. Can control envelope for specific voice under global. Unison for super SAR and cool. Change waveform use change. Top slider is harmonic. Very useful. Bottom slider is phase. Not worry. Not use a lot. Is cool. Right form is bass. Left after sliders. H and random harmonics. Drop down change bass waveform. Slider said waveform. On waveform harmonics. PF mod make cool. Also can slider add P apt DT harm if want harmonic change note. SA yasha cool. Filter. Mod BF mod for full. Speedy aja gurat. Not worry.